Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would find myself operating in a vast setting, one that was a natural environment, though of an exotic, more alien design. Not alien enough that it was unable to be identified as a natural environment, for I have a little doubt that although standard is it for the years to express through all creational-based natural environments as that which supports the created body forms that awareness animates through, there will be environments as nonsensical to the personal self in relation to the references it has as available to it, its experienced and stored experiential memories, as there are incomprehensible dimensional positions. For such dimensions I have experienced before, and tend to refer to them simply as chaotic, but which would be recognizable and relatable to body forms designed for such, as the body types are the products of their environments, and each body type will have the necessary references where survival in their associated environments can be so, either innate, pre-programmed idea references, or those as afforded during the formative years. Every environmental feature will make sense in relation to the references pertaining to it, as present in the body form memory vehicles designed for such environments. But remove a body form and place it in an entirely different consciousness-affected environment, according to the extent of the difference, will dictate what of the environment can be recognized in a comparative relation to the one left behind. A tree will always be identified as such, regardless of its design, but only assuming it has the standard structure, that of the trunk, branches, and leaves. The environment I was in here was similar enough in relation to my references pertaining to how environments should be, that it was identified as such, though much of what was contained within it were at such odds with that which features in environments I have experienced, physical level and real side, that they were beyond description, to the extent that I simply couldn't register them. They were there, but undefinable to the point where they effectively were not at the same time, as my senses were unable to process them into anything of a similar design as resides in my current memory vehicle. Present in this semi-recognizable environment would be large numbers of various assorted body forms, and just as it was with the environment where I could recognize it as such, but a certain proportion of it nonsensical to my eyes, so it was with certain of the body types. Some were humanoid, others of a recognizable design, reptilian, and so forth, but a percentage of them I lacked relatable references to understand what I was beholding. It seemed all were gathered in this curious environment as though a further indication of how multitudes of species throughout multi-dimensional creation are becoming gradually united through an intent set with the years that is becoming ever more prevalent. For as our intents align, so our experiences will converge, and species that never would have been in association now are doing just this, gathering for a common cause, that of mutual support in regards to the awareness process. For indeed, realization becomes so that despite the nature and design of the body type, every being is within and is the same life, the same all-everything awareness. The body types are just creations, vehicles for awareness to animate through, to enable the real purpose of his recognition to be achieved. That overall creation and the secondary personal self-position presents as that which the all is not, simulated encapsulated parts and pieces, ideas, and so a comparison is available by which the true reality can be recognized, that of the everything in relation to the idea pieces. That although all the body forms present were embracing this objective, is recognition, it was a process far from completed, and many of the body types still were holding attachment to certain of their respective species ideas that ultimately would need be released. Many of the ideas were ritualistic, as though the various aliens versions of religion or spiritual orientated ideas, and it was rather fascinating to observe some of the species as they went about their particular created idea rituals, some as nonsensical as the body types, appearance-wise, that performed them. All of it, however, and indeed every idea of a consciousness, irrespective of its source and the simulated effects yielded, are that which the isness is not. All ideas are but the comparison references, and should rather be objectified accordingly, and treated with the indifference they deserve. For if we cling to the ideas, they become our reality, and a reality based on the effects of created ideas can only be experienced in the simulators. As the all is the everything reality, where no idea in isolation can be, and neither can we be positioned there should we be unable to release the idea parts and pieces of the whole. But as I said, an inspiring scene, despite its brevity, verification of the sheer volume and array of body forms stepping up at this moment and coming together in a unity of objective, that of is recognition. In the scene that followed, I would initially find myself in my recreated grandparents' house in the company of Jeremy. That although generally the recreated houses tend to represent the consciousness, as I have shared on previous occasions, the recreated house of my deceased grandparents tends to be utilized on the real side as a place of meeting, many times with guides, DUANE, and additionally with other new friends, etc., as was the case here, and where we were discussing real side experiences in fact, and where they may be indicating or hinting as to our next step or stage and course of action. The scene switching now to where I would be in an observing capacity initially, as though watching the simulated proceedings as we might a television drama. The real awareness as a part of the isness, everything a reality, is then through all consciousness effected a simulation, and can afford the personal self anything that is transpiring in creation, absent of the necessity of inserting a simulated form, which only will be required should there be a need to exact alteration to what's taking place, or engage with the participants, etc. I was marking the progress of what seemed to be a small dog, though as impressions revealed, this wasn't a form prior to the formulation of the secondary personal self. This was a being where the free will wielding a personal self had been established, and this was simply the form the individual was choosing to assume. No impressions would reveal the identity of the dog, though it was a relatively aware individual and undertaking its own process of awareness. Evidently the dog had drawn the attention of the ill-intended, as it was in the process of being pursued by a colossal body form, a giant in every sense of the reference, but impressions would reveal was in actuality a very powerful demon of some kind. Impressions would further unveil that this aware being in the dog form had been part of an operation in regards to the sealing of certain portals, and that if successful, then certain body forms would be denied the ability to travel from their points of origin to other areas of creation. This was a form of containment, and I have participated in such operations before, where necessary has it been to restrict certain destructively inclined body types, that they cannot wreak havoc multi-dimensionally, as is their intent, and indeed within their consciousness developed and body form effected ability to do so. With everything based on agreement as it is, despite how powerful a body form may be, and the capability it is endowed with, that such a powerful being can impose itself on others adversely, is according to the idea being a consciousness installed that this can be so. Absent of the ideas, and the simulated effects can't follow. Where it comes to powerful beings, such as the demon in this experience, that they can potentially harm and destroy on a vast scale, this indicates they have a trawled vast agreement that enables this to be a potentiality. As everything equals itself, so destructive individuals rather implode in on themselves. They self-destruct in reflected accordance to their choices and actions, Their creational positioning, body form design, and circumstances will be in equal measure to their decided abrasiveness. In reality, everything is its immediate effects. A destructively inclined individual is already the effects of themselves, but through the consciousness design, so must the causes process to the effects in a more gradual manner. The city already is destroyed, but the movie must be sat through to this culmination point. What can happen is that alternative effects can be implemented, that rather than allow the destruction to be executed, and the destructive individual then the recipient of their own destructiveness, instead the final effect outcome can be containment or displacement, that limits or prevents the individual from being able to impact any other being in the simulator adversely. This then is not a violation of a free will, as in reality this is impossible, each individual deciding and effecting what they will, and even where individuals are the recipient of the destructiveness of others, this still is a free will agreement that allows such to take place. The effects, however, are being exchanged, that the reflection, the karma, if you will, is still met, just an alternative measure, though along the same lines, that of effect in equal accordance to the cause. And as effects are instantly manifested from the causes, no need is it to wait for the movie to roll out to the end, where the powerful, ill-intended beings have executed and delivered their carnage. We can, as they say, nip it in the bud. Prior to the rollout of the devastation, we can exact our alternative effect. The ill-intended powerful being can be contained or displaced into the phantom zone. This has been a fairly common theme of recent experiences, that of sealing these ill-intended beings and containing them at their point of origin, especially in regards to portals, which seem a standard and consciousness-decided feature that facilitates multi-dimensional traversing in this simulator. And where then such portals are determined and sealed, that prevents these powerful beings from accessing other areas of creation, and according to the destructiveness of the being dictates the extent of containment or isolation. This seemed to be the situation here, that this aware being in the dog form had been involved with an attempted portal sealing, which would restrict the ability of certain powerful and very large demonic characters from having full access to the simulator and unleashing their intended havoc. As I said, as powerful as a being may be, it can do nothing to any other absent of the agreement that this can be so, and apparent was it here, that irrespective of the dog being on his respective awareness process, he still possessed of agreements in relation to the giant demon that allowed his harm or destruction at the demon's hands. The awareness process does involve a facing and releasing of all ideas of the consciousness, including all agreements we have extended to the various powerful beings, the demons, the gods, etc., throughout the many lifetimes we have operated in the simulators. Taken to a conclusion then, we become rather untouchable, as we will be absent of the attachment with any idea. Thus, we are the effects of nothing unless we consciously choose to be, including the ability of others to harm or eliminate us. The dog had no other recourse than to run from the giant demon, Evidently his portal ceiling had been somewhat interrupted then prior to completion, but the dog was rather creative and evasive. For not only would the demon attempt to crush the dog with might of a body form, but be setting magical traps, if you will. The very environment the dog was retreating across would as though come alive, snaring and restricting it, and where necessary was it for the dog to struggle loose, before the demon laid its mighty hands upon him. As I said, seemingly decided was for this demon's karma to be due, and the effects of itself and others of its kind, for it was not the only demon of abrasive inclination, was to be managed, that portals were set to be sealed, trapping these demons in the area of creation they hailed from, limiting their destructive capability. The dog would fade from the scene, and rather than continue to observe what was unfolding from my side from the simulation real awareness perspective view, I and another aware being would be inserted into the situation with the objective of completing the portal sealing. Necessary was it for my associate and myself to become as two, as though multiplying ourselves, and each pair of two now would have a separate function, for the demon was joined by others, all of an equally gargantuan stature, and were rampaging through the environment we were in, their attention now fixated upon us, which would have made it rather a difficult task to seal the portals while fending them off. But as I said, my companion and myself had duplicated our body forms, and it was the duplicates that were dealing with the demons, unbeknownst to the demons, which allowed our original forms to go about the process of a portal sealing without distraction or interruption. It was a case of the awareness that my associate and myself were animating simultaneously through the two body forms we each were operating as. One set keeping the demons occupied, the other set would be seated in as though a kind of mechanical contraption that emerged from the very ground. The personal self would have no inkling in regards to portal mechanics, of their activation, or indeed, in this case, of the shutting down of them, but the real awareness is a part of the isness everything that is through all consciousness, every idea that affects every expression of a form and a feature is available to the real awareness, and understanding as to all technological application, portals included. Our duplicates had drawn the giant demons away from our position, sat in the mechanical portal-associated devices as we were, and what was transpiring between them was taking place in the far distance, the giant demons visible still by virtue of their size. My associate and myself then began what seemed a very long and drawn-out process of a portal sealing, the sense of years passing by were I to apply a time estimation, and as though to emphasize this, we both had grown full and very long beards. However, we would ultimately be successful. The environmental spot we were in served as the position where technology was available to seal the particular portals, which had allowed these demons the ability to travel from their point of origin. The demons now fading from the scene, as though, with the sealing of the portals, they no longer could operate in the creational position we were in, as though necessary was it for the portals to remain open, even as the demons had passed through them and were operating in areas of creation not their own. The demons now effectively were contained and resigned to their creational position, unable to infringe upon any other and carry out their intended destruction. The dog that had been part of the earlier portal sealing attempt would not feature again. During the lengthy portal sealing procedure, a technological method that I can't readily describe, I had become progressively nauseous, as though, as a result of interacting with the technology required, that we had to be seated within, adversely impacted had been the simulated form that was carrying out the procedure. On waking back to the physical, this nausea would not abate, but instead would be retained in my physical body form, and I have been rather sick as a consequence, even days later and at this moment of typing out the experience. For indeed, everything starts on the real side, our agreements and creations, or ideas as created by others we have agreed with, all will impact immediately and other dimensionally and filter through to the physical at some point. In this case, the technology I was dealing with was of such a nature that my body form was unduly affected, as though the tech were operating with some form of distorted electromagnetic energy, the other dimensional equivalent of 5G, say, and this translated as a sickness that impacted through to my physical body form, and very likely will abate at some stage, but ultimately we had executed our objective. The giant, ill-intended demons were contained.